It was a mass shooting, and it was domestic violence, often the most public and most private forms of violence. How often do you get a spam call, a robocall? Coloradans are deluged with them. Tonight, we look at how easy it's become to flood our phones with calls. Democrats say they don't need voters' permission to raise billions in fees, so Republicans call their bluff with a plan to ask voters' permission to lower fees. And an up-close look at wildfires, beyond just the reflective, oh, fires are bad. Well, no, they're complicated. You can handle complicated, because this is next. We rush to the why every time there is a mass shooting in Colorado, which was Sunday, and it was March before that. The why behind the shooting in Colorado Springs over the weekend appears to be domestic violence. Police say that a man killed his girlfriend and 5 other adults at a birthday party before killing himself. Our Steve Steger starts us off tonight with a look at the link between domestic violence and mass murder. Colorado's troubling issues with both.
Something felt different about this when a gunman killed 6 people, then himself inside a mobile home in Colorado Springs.
It occurred in a private residence versus something that occurs in a public space. It's not looked at with the same lens as something that happens in public where there's an active shooter situation.
Jen Doe is the executive director of the Denver Domestic Violence Coordinating Council, charged with documenting data on domestic violence across the state. The latest data available from 2019 shows 60 incidents involving domestic violence led to 70 deaths in Colorado. Doe says national research finds these shootings and domestic violence are linked more often than you might think.
50 to 60% of mass shootings have some connection to domestic violence. So that could either be that one or more people killed in a mass shooting are an intimate partner or family member of the shooter, or that the shooters in many cases have a history of domestic violence.
And the vast majority of mass shootings don't happen in public places.
What we do know is that 61% of the mass shootings have occurred entirely in the home. So that is different than the perception that we all tend to believe.
Beverly Kingston is the executive director of CU's Center for the Study and Prevention of Violence.
I'm even surprised by it.
Even though we don't know the details of what led up to the shooting in Colorado Springs, both Doe and Kingston say there almost always are signs in advance that go unreported.
We could have community systems in place that people could call or text and put a tip in that could be investigated. We could be building a structure like that so that people can get help.
That concept of safe to tell that goes beyond schools. Jen Doe tells me that her data shows 60 to 65% of instances of domestic violence that end in death involve guns in Colorado. That's higher than the national average, which is about 50 to 55%. State lawmakers are currently looking at a bill that would beef up current state law when it comes to relinquishing firearms from those who are charged and convicted with domestic violence cases. Kyle.
That's an important story, Steve. I think it challenges a lot of our preconceptions about what mass violence looks like. Also different in this case is how little information authorities have released following the shooting.
Yeah, and it seemed odd to us yesterday that really all we got was a press release from the Colorado Springs Police Department, which was full of statements from community leaders just kind of talking about this incident. But we haven't really heard from the police department yet, and journalists haven't had a chance to really ask any questions about this, which is awfully odd in a situation like this. It may just have something to do with the fact that they're still investigating. It's a pretty big scene, but that's certainly a big question.
All right, Steve, thank you. What do you say we share some hopefulness now? Colorado's COVID cases and our hospitalizations and our positivity rate are all trending down today. This is what we've been waiting weeks for. And then the news that kids ages 12 to 15 could start getting the Pfizer vaccine by the end of the week. The FDA gave the emergency use approval today, And the state of Colorado estimates it's about 300,000 young people in Colorado who would be newly eligible for the vaccine with the permission of their parents. So we've changed our vaccination pie chart as a result. We shrunk down the gray slice that represents too young to get the vaccine. That now just represents 15% of the state's population, estimated to be under the age of 12. You've got 36.7% of our population that has now completed the vaccine process, almost 2.2 million people. So how often do you look at your phone buzzing, you see an unknown number and just assume robocall, not answering it? Coloradans get the 5th most robocalls per capita in the U.S., so says the Federal Trade Commission. We asked our Chris Vanderveen to explain why robocalls seem to have surged into a daily annoyance.
Okay, let's stop our story for a moment and consider Mark.
Hi, Mark.
Mark doesn't know it, but in this group, he's the Mark. And Patsy,
Hi, Patsy.
she's the Patsy. You might not fall for that robocall, but Mark and Patsy, they tend to live up to their names. Problem is, in a country of millions and millions of phone numbers, their numbers amount to a pair of needles in a haystack of needles.
Ouch.
It all makes the search for them a game of chance. Not long ago, the rules were simple. 1 quarter, 1 pull, 1 call.
Hello?
Slow, methodical, and not terribly productive. Which makes now the perfect time to talk about the robo half of the robocall. Automation turns 1 pull every 10 seconds into 10,000 calls every second. Yes, that's happening.
It is millions of people a day. And if you just get a 0.01% rate of people that start to take that message seriously, and of those, if just 1% of those progress to the next step, it might be 1 in a million, but if you get a couple of those a day, you've scored pretty big. And the phone bill for that, hundreds of dollars.
Hundreds for millions of rolls of the dice, stacking the deck against you and your odds of a quiet, peaceful, and robocall-free night, all while turning each one of us into a Mark or a Patsy or just a sucker in a game where the odds are no longer in our favor.
So Chris is basically on the annoying stuff beat these days. He is also looking at why we get peppered with solicitations right after we register a car with the DMV. DMV, of course, is not supposed to be selling our personal information for those kinds of solicitations. Chris will get into that annoyance tonight on 9 News at 9 and 10, and he'll have a more in-depth look at the issue tomorrow on Next. Democratic Senator Michael Bennett has not always seemed very happy in the U.S. Senate, says it's dysfunctional, a mess. But, he recently got his child tax credit signed into law, and today he made it official. He wants to keep his job. He rolled out a ton of endorsements for his re-election, including from Governor Polis. These endorsement dumps are one way to scare off potential primary challengers. We'll be watching to see if Bennett gets a challenge from a progressive who's to his left. We are going to spend some considerable time this month talking about the issue of hunger in Colorado, the extent of the problem, and how food insecurity is being fought on a number of fronts. You all did some beautiful work on this with your Word of Thanks microgiving campaign for the Food Bank of the Rockies Culturally Responsive Foods Initiative. You've raised $35,000 and counting since last Wednesday to purchase the foods that various communities say that they really long for, but don't often see among the food bank staples, the usual stuff. Food Bank of the Rockies went out and listened to the Latino community, the Ethiopian community, the Vietnamese community, Russian communities, and others, and learned what harder to find and sometimes more expensive to get foods meant the most to those families. Your donations will mean that families will be able to prepare dinner with the ingredients that they know and that they love, the kind of foods that they long to share with their children. That is a very special thing. Thank you for being a part of it. The CU President's Office was one of the last positions in Colorado you would reliably see Republicans hold lately. Now that's likely to change. The plan to raise fees to fund transportation projects could be undercut by an effort to lower those same fees at the same time. Students from Denver head for the hills to learn about wildfires. And the lesson is a big one, about how some things in life are both good and bad at the same time. Not unlike this television program. Next. The Democratic plan to collect billions of dollars for Colorado's transportation budget took an interesting twist today. So Democrats want to go and create and raise a variety of different new fees to come up with this money, including raising the gas tax. But before that even happens, there is a new conservative effort to lower the gas tax. One side's pushing it up, one side's pushing it down. Here's politics guy Marshall Zellinger.
This provides transportation options and relief for Colorado drivers.
It's the first hearing for the transportation bill that is supposed to add $5 billion over 10 years to pay for roads and fund alternative ways to get around.
This is a significant step forward in funding our 10-year plan.
The bill would add 27 cents in fees to every delivery, up to 30 cents in fees for every rideshare, and add a new fee at the gas pump, 2 cents per gallon starting July 2022 and increasing up to 8 cents a gallon extra by July 2028.
Our voters care deeply about education and have said don't cut education to fill a pothole, but fill my pothole. And that's what we're doing.
Since January, months before the bill was finalized, Democratic State Senator Faith Winter and Democratic State Representative Matt Gray have captured photos from their meetings with groups that will be impacted by the bill.
We had 132 stakeholder meetings.
Senator Winter and I spent the entire summer and fall talking to people from across the state.
Meetings with environmental groups, cities like Broomfield and Westminster, local governments and mayors, chambers of commerce, Amazon, and DoorDash.
We want to modernize how we collect transportation revenue, and what that looks more like is charging people based on how they use the roads, not how many gallons of gas they buy.
When you think about what they did, the legislature has gone to such great lengths to remove the voters from this conversation.
Jesse Mallory, state director of the conservative group Americans for Prosperity Colorado, took the first step today to get an issue on the ballot in 2022 to lower the state's 22-cent per gallon gas tax, just as the legislature seeks to add a fee on top of it.
We're going to go to the voters and give them the opportunity to say, hey, do you want to see a reduction of which they just increased?
Winter said voters have had their say through the stakeholder meetings and by electing her and other lawmakers.
When I talk to my voters, they all want to get out of traffic. They want better roads.
There are two proposals to lower the gas tax. One would lower it 2 cents per gallon, the other 4 cents per gallon. It depends on what passes at the legislature, according to Jesse Mallory. Colorado's gas tax is currently 22 cents per gallon. It's been that way since 1992. And according to Democratic Senate Majority Leader Steve Fenberg, if the gas tax had been allowed to adjust and increase with inflation, it would be 44 cents per gallon today. And that was his way of saying 2 to 8 cents per gallon is not doubling it like inflation would have, Kyle.
With all the things to disagree about in politics, Marshall, I'm glad that everybody agrees that this is a sweater day and that Matt Gray's pandemic beard is spectacular. Thank you, Marshall. CU's next president is not likely to be a Republican politician. That would be a departure from the last three CU presidents, last being current president Mark Kennedy, who is now headed for the exit. Kennedy announced today in a statement that he's in talks with the CU Board of Regents for an orderly transition, which sounds like a discussion about the number of zeros on the check he may receive. Democrats now control the Board of Regents. It was a Republican-controlled Board of Regents that brought in Kennedy in 2019. There were weeks of student protests at the time, lots of concerns about Kennedy's conservative voting record back when he was a congressman from Minnesota. Recently, Boulder faculty reprimanded Kennedy for, quote, failure of leadership with respect to diversity, equity, and inclusion. That was a first-of-its-kind faculty censure. The Board of Regents has recently flipped from Republican majority to Democratic control last year, first time it's happened in 4 decades. So you got 7 of those regent seats that line up with each of Colorado's congressional districts, and then 2 of the seats are at-large, or statewide. One of those at-large seats is about to be converted to Colorado's new 8th congressional district that we're going to get, has yet to be drawn. We talk about that all the time. Republican Heidi Ganal is the at-large regent whose seat is most likely to be switched by the legislature. She is a potential GOP candidate for governor in 2022, so she might be totally fine with that. The other at-large regent is Democrat and Vice Chair Leslie Smith. Her seat's not up for re-election until 2024. A lesson about the complicated impact of wildfires.
They just create a lot of change, which is sometimes what environments need.
A trip to a burn scar with the Native American Academy of Denver. Next.
Spring rain showers for the metro area, snow for the mountains and foothills, and advisories for travel as cold air settles in after a chilly day. Highs today were some 20 degrees cooler than average. The rain ramps up across the eastern plains, mixing with snow in Denver later tonight through tomorrow morning. Then we go back over to all rain in the afternoon. Heavy snow. We have a winter storm warning out for the mountains and foothills with winter weather and travel advisories for the Palmer Divide and Monument Hill. Could see a little bit of light snow on the grass here in the city by tomorrow morning. Cloudy, rain and snow, low 35. Rain and snow tomorrow, a chilly high of 43. Any clearing tomorrow night will need to protect plants with temperatures falling below freezing. And then we break out of it. Mid 70s for Friday and Saturday, close to 80 by Sunday afternoon.
Of course. Fire destroys, and fire renews the land. That is the lesson recently learned by the students at the American Indian Academy of Denver. They visited a burn scar in Lyons to study the impact of wildfires on the ecosystem. They brought along a drone and our photojournalist, Corky Scholl.
Today is a fun day for the American Indian Academy of Denver.
We are in Lyons, Colorado, and we are examining a burn site from last year.
Should we go to the burn area?
Yeah. Can I go to the burn area?
My name's Chaitan Christensen.
I got it.
Today we have a field trip with our 6th grade STEAM students.
If you touch this, you get ash on your fingers.
We're out here looking at the effects of wildfires on the land.
So we're actually going to be able to go up really pretty high and get a sense of what's the extent of the burn.
My name is Vivian.
My name is Ricky Carter.
I really like science, and I really like to see how the environment handles certain disasters.
And we're testing out our drone.
But look how high it is, Marlon. Do you see? We're looking at the biotic life out here today, so we're hoping to see, hopefully, regeneration after fire.
We got the new green growth as opposed to the dead cactus nearby.
Go up higher, yeah.
Fire is good and it's bad, it's a mix.
It can destroy homes, it can destroy animals' habitats.
No, it's not always a horrible thing.
Yep.
It keeps coming up that fire's scary, fire can be bad, but I want them to see the flip side of the coin, that fire is part of a natural ecosystem. It's a natural disturbance that happens in our landscape and it's necessary. There we go. Good job, Helena.
Nice!
Number of different perspectives there. A double take at an odd-looking driver in traffic. It's the most Colorado thing we saw today. That plus your feedback next. The most Colorado thing we saw today is a dog that has a more exciting life than I do. Mark spotted the dog Friday trying to merge on First Avenue through Cherry Creek. Let that good boy in. I have never looked as comfortable and confident behind the wheel of any vehicle as that Bernese Mountain Dog does behind the wheel of that Dodge Ram. The email address for your dog photos and all other correspondence is next at 9news.com. Lauren writes in to say, please provide the positivity and hospitalization numbers. Are you trying not to be positive? Lauren, we openly celebrated great news on hospitalizations, cases, positivity. We skipped the charts to make room for some other news today. Michael, good, bad, and the ugly, says the good is word of thanks. The bad is that we're leaving the basement studio at the end of the month. And the ugly, the sweaters.